I wish that all the counts had been dropped, because that's probably what should have been. I mean, at least it was a step in the right direction. It goes to the sloppiness of, frankly, the prosecutors down there. We know that that's the case, and more importantly, that this should not have been brought in general.
What do you think it means for whether or not he will decide to remove Fani Willis from this case? What does your gut tell you on this, Alina?
I don't think it's indicative necessarily of his actions in terms of Fani. I think that Fani, whatever she calls herself, she's got her own issues that are outside of this case that clearly have permeated her decision-making ability. And as I've always said, as my clients always said, we know that these were motivated by one thing and one thing only, and that's election interference that's trying to bring Trump down. And
I am unfortunately constrained by language requirements for our live stream, so I can't say to Alina Habba what I would truly like to say about the Fani, whatever she calls herself. I think that you could probably fill in the blanks. I will say this: it's Fani. She calls herself that for I think a good reason, because it's her goddamn name. That's her actual name. You call yourself your name. Lots of people do. Actually, millions of people. I call myself John because my name is John. You call yourself Alina because that's your actual name. What the hell is that supposed to mean? By the way, like Martha McCallum had just said her name, and Martha McCallum had just pronounced her name correctly. So you don't really have an excuse. You don't have an excuse, but you do have a motivation, don't you? Because I don't think it's lost on anyone in the audience why she said what she said. Okay, Fani, whatever she calls herself. The message is clear. She's the sort of person that we don't need to respect her name, okay? And it fits into kind of a pattern for Fox News of not particularly caring about how names are pronounced for certain sorts of people who happen to be Black women. I don't know, it's just a pattern that I've noticed, you know? Alina Habba totally needlessly did that. She could have just called her the AG. She just could have called her Willis. She could have called her by her actual name. She chose not to do that, forcing us to speculate as to why that is. And I know Fox News, I know how they treat Black women and their names. But anyway, if we set aside the ridiculous, needless racism there, let's talk about what's actually going on. So it is a good day for Donald Trump. I mean, Alina, it's not even a good day for Alina Habba. She's not involved in that trial. She's a lawyer for Trump, so maybe, I don't know, by proximity or whatever, it's a good day. But 6 of the counts against Trump and his co-defendants were actually dropped. But as we talked about yesterday in the show, I do have to be clear, they could return. Like soliciting a public official to violate their oath of office, like that's what they did. The judge even made clear that he thinks that there's a strong amount of evidence there. They just need to be a little bit clearer about exactly what law was broken in that violation of office. And there's every reason to believe that they'll be able to do that. And no amount of Fani Willis having gone on dates or whatever is gonna change the fundamental facts of this case, which have already resulted in a number of people pleading guilty as part of settlements. His co-conspirators are already dropping like flies around this because they know what they did. They tried to overturn the results of that election in a variety of forms. And Donald Trump had among the most direct involvement in that. He was the guy calling up Brad Raffensperger and telling him, I need you to find me 11,184 votes, one more than I need. Sometimes I just wish that we could get these people, these ridiculous cartoon characters that infest our politics, whether it's the pundits or the politicians or the lawyers like Alina Habba, and just like, can we give them that truth serum from Harry Potter and just get them to be something like honest for 5 seconds? Alina Habba, do you think that was a perfect phone call? Do you think that politicians should be calling up secretaries of state and telling them to find votes just enough that they win? Is that how our system should be run? You don't actually believe that. You obviously do not believe that. And it's not even like this isn't even your case. So you don't have to be clear about that. But you are his legal sort of press secretary. That's why you're on Martha McCallum's show. Could at least try to be remotely honest about this and pretending to be aggrieved about Fani Willis and her sexual history or whatever. She was at least a little bit honest that she was not predicting that Willis would be removed from the case. She says that the fact that these charges were dropped doesn't necessarily mean that the judge is likely to boot her. So she was at least honest about that, maybe because the stakes weren't that high. She could afford to say something that's actually true. But for the rest of it, it's just ridiculous and dishonest and weirdly, needlessly racist. So That's Alina Habba. That's the reputation that she wants to build for herself, and she's free to do that. We'll see what long-term effect that has on her life or on her career. But for now, we're waiting to find out what's actually going to happen with Willis. Will she remain on the case? If she doesn't, if she's removed, will the case entirely go away? There is no good logical reason why it would, but that is apparently, according to all the people closely following this, a possible outcome. So that's a weird component of our politics today.